Good turnout. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this session on the Industry View. I'm delighted to have with me Eurig Druce, the Vice President and Group Managing Director of Stellantis UK. In that role, Eurig is responsible for relationships with hundreds of dealerships and obviously its diverse portfolio of brands. And I'm looking forward to hearing his views on the biggest challenges in the industry, including electrification, the retail model, and emerging brands, and more. So, Eurig, talk to us a little bit about the year for Stellantis so far, and what you've seen has kind of been the real opportunities for the business.
It's been a challenging year, I would say, for the motor industry in the UK, wider than just Stellantis, but for us as well, 100%. Number of challenges coming our way. I think well publicised in terms of some of the more generic challenges in the industry right now. When we look at the VETS legislation, SAV mandate compliance, game changing in terms of impact on all of our businesses, whether that's us as manufacturers or dealer partners. But on top of that, then you have additional kind of legislative challenges in terms of electric car grant, which has excluded some manufacturers, and we are well represented within the electric car grant, so that's a big benefit for us. But then, of course, later in the year, we have this challenge now with ECOS as well. So a lot of government legislative challenges on top of the start of the year, of course, when we see, and I see it in my network's profitability right now, the impact of some of those decisions taken in the budget last year. Yeah. So you try to make a comparison, and it's a composite level comparison, of course, for our networks, but year on year, I can clearly see the gap in profitability is linked to costs of employment, national insurance costs that impact my own business, of course, but impact my dealer partners' business as well. So these are decisions taken, of course, because we need to generate revenue as a country, but are challenging in terms of creating an environment that is fruitful for growth, and fruitful for growth in the wider economy, and certainly fruitful for growth in the motor industry.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen that challenge of a market that is growing very, very slowly. We have the challenge of electrification for the industry and those overheads that are rising for businesses. Yeah. On the electrification part, obviously it's been well reported, the pressures around the ZEV mandate. What issues is that causing for your networks? And you mentioned the electric car grant. How are you able to kind of counter those?
So I think if we start from the network side of things, I would have to congratulate my network, in fact, because they are doing an exceptional job of taking us towards compliance in the SAV mandate. Stellantis, overall, we were compliant in 2024. We will be compliant in 2025. Of course, that challenge becomes bigger as we move on into 26, 27, up towards the incredible level of 80% of electric sales for 2030. But I think from a dealer network point of view, we work together really well to deliver that transition. And if we move to the electric car grant, we are, as Stellantis, 57%. So of all of the vehicles that qualify for the grant, we are at 57%. So we're well represented. We saw the announcement this week. We have the new Citroën C5 Aircross long range being the third vehicle now to qualify for that maximum grant level, so £3,750, which is brilliant for us, and good for delivering that transition. Of course, the challenge that we all have and that we're all battling within is the fact that demand from the public in the UK is not at the level that the government wants us to be in terms of that transition. And the best indicator of that, I guess, is if we look at the private market. And the private market year to date to the end of October is at a 14% BEV mix. We need to be at 28% BEV mix this year. So clearly, times two, there's a big, big gap in terms of natural demand. There is some green shoots. October standalone looks like 18% mix for BEV in that retail channel, so better than the year-to-date position. But even at that point, a million miles away from compliance. And so what that creates us all I'm not talking Stellantis alone here, but every manufacturer in the same boat, I guess, is that when you have that gap between natural demand and what you have to deliver, and make no mistake, I have to deliver because I can't afford to pay £12,000 of fines. And so we have to deliver, and that, of course, creates a push market, and you see the results of that push market in what happens to residual values of the cars. And this is really quite a challenging moment because as residuals are low and have been decreasing over the last kind of 2 years or so, makes it incredibly difficult to sell the new car, of course. And so it is a doomed situation right now, frankly, where we for sure needed the electric car grant scheme to push the demand from the public, but we need more than that. We need the 360-degree plan from the government. That is around charging infrastructure, it's around the cost of electricity. You know, I obviously don't just sell cars in the UK, I build cars and vans in the UK as well. We were the first manufacturer to invest in an electric-only manufacturing plant in the UK. But that decision is somewhat questioned, really, when you look at the cost of electricity in the UK is way, way higher than the cost of electricity in somewhere like Spain or France. So we're not talking about building in the Far East or building in a low-cost economy scenario in maybe Eastern Europe. But if I compare Western European countries, the cost of manufacturing in the UK is significantly higher than the cost of manufacturing in Europe. So all of these challenges come together to a scenario where, going back to your first point, we haven't really got a situation where we're open for business, open for investment in the UK, and quite a lot of the legislative routines that we are seeing, the policies that are coming, are actually dampening our ability to grow.
Yeah, arguably the government has given us lots of mixed messages around its set of the targets for EV adoption, and it wants to encourage consumers into those, but then we've seen VED start to come in onto electric vehicles. There's talk that the budget may have some taxation implications for electric vehicles as well.
Yeah.
And as a huge brand manufacturer in the UK, that must be something that's really quite concerning.
It is. We of course wait to see the budget to see what actually will end up being the policies announced. But right now, when you're in a scenario where retail demand, if I was being really positive, is at 18%. Let's take October in isolation, 18% mix versus the 28% target. The very last thing we should be considering doing is to bring a taxation in that will dampen a consumer's proposition to go towards an electric car. And so, very much aligned, I guess, with the majority of my colleagues in the industry, we would not want to see a scenario where it's more challenging for a customer to choose an electric car right now. And this is going back to that point about having a 360-degree plan. We've talked about something that compels demand in the electric car grant. We talk about charging infrastructure. If we want to deliver the transition, and let's be clear, I'm not against the transition to electric vehicles. We have invested hugely. We have 40 models in the UK available as full electric vehicles. We're able to do that transition, but you can't do it from a manufacturer or from a dealer network side alone. This kind of transition, and it's a generational, multi-generational change in the way that we go about driving our cars, that requires a comprehensive plan from the government to do it. You see it, Norway succeed. Not necessarily saying that I want to see Norwegian-style policies, but you can make that kind of transition. The question is, can we afford to do it right now as UK? Maybe not. And then if we are going to make that transition, we have to be all in. We can't be in a scenario where there's fines for not compliance, but there is nothing to drive the public towards choosing those vehicles. Yeah.
Do you think there is any opportunity for amendment to the ZEV mandate or changes at all? And although I guess that also poses issues for manufacturers which have a product plan set on where they expect the market to be in 5 years' time, and actually if that changes, that creates other headaches, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I think if we start from the back end of your question, I think I'm really lucky in as far as I represent Stellantis here, and all of our investment is into multi-energy platforms. So all of our cars we can build as a battery electric vehicle, or we can switch to being ICE or mild hybrid or full plug-in hybrid. That's the strategy we took, because I guess we second-guessed that this kind of transition would be politically liable to change in terms of conditions. So we haven't gone, and we were criticised, I think, a few years ago for not maybe going full battery electric in terms of our investment. I think that decision's proved to be the right one. When you consider we sell vehicles globally, as do the majority of manufacturers, it's clear the transition's not going to happen in America in the time frame that we were talking about a few years ago. It's fairly clear that transition is not going to happen now in Europe at the timing that we were talking about. Who knows about the UK? It is a challenge really, because as you go to 2027 and beyond, then the level of BEV cells required to be compliant, we are moving to the majority of cars sold. And at that point, there's a chasm that needs to be built and bridged over from where we are today to being able to be compliant at that point. And right now, I can't see where that bridge is coming from. I don't see the level of demand changing at that kind of pace. There is talk of a review in 2027. But of course, when you talk about reviews, it creates uncertainty in the marketplace, and that absolutely is the last thing we want as well.
Yeah.
And we saw that when the electric car grant was announced without any consultation with any vehicle manufacturer. Of course, it's announced on this day, and all that happened in reality was no electric vehicle was sold for the next few weeks because everybody wanted to see, well, which vehicles will qualify for the grant. So these things are sensitive. It's hard to get it right. But I can tell you it's costing a lot of money for every time we get it wrong.
Yeah. And that security, that understanding of where we're going is vital for the retailers as well. Retailers are putting in their own investment in charging facilities to ultimately in 3 to 5 years' time, the vast majority of used cars they'll be selling will also be electric. So it's that balance of knowing where we're going to be.
I think that there's no doubt in my mind, at least, and this is a matter of opinion, I guess, but I think there's no doubt that we have to accept that globally we're going to have to make a shift away from fossil fuels into clean energy. I think that's an accepted fact on the majority. Whether that is indeed electric or whether that's hydrogen or any other technology in the future, who knows? But right now, the solution is fairly clearly electric. I think it's the pace of that transition then. And you're quite right, the dealer partners that we have and the dealer partners that other manufacturers have also need that level of certainty to know where to invest. But right now, you're seeing a big gap between what is desired at government level, the support from government towards delivering what they want, and the level of demand from the public. There's just too big a gap between the two things.
You mentioned earlier employee car ownership schemes. There's some potential changes afoot to those, but talk to me a bit about those and the role that they play in ensuring that brands such as yours have a variety of stock out there for dealers.
Yeah. So ECOS, we'll call it. So we don't go employee car ownership schemes. We'll call it ECOS, and then it's a shorter sentence every time I mention it. But we're talking about 100,000 cars a year through various UK manufacturers. I'm quite a small player relatively in that market. We have 5,000 vehicles on a fleet at any one time. And these are the important point to note here is that they are employee-owned cars. So I think this is where there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what those cars are. And so I operate a number of these vehicles myself, as do all of my employees, including, of course, production operators that are at my Aylesbury Court plant that need these cars to get to work.
Of course, yeah.
But we pay for the vehicles monthly. And so the concept that you then have to pay company car tax as if it's a freebie from the company, there's some massive misalignment there in understanding of what the products are. So it's an absolute lose-lose policy in everything that we looked at. The government are working on some advice and forecast from the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility. And what that advice says is that if you apply company car tax to these vehicles, then 80% of the people that currently drive them will continue using those vehicles. We have a big audience in the room. I pay £300 for my car today. When the policy is implemented, that would be £600 per month. How many of you would still take the vehicle? Not many hands. We forecast probably 20%, and that's in a scenario where we have people being given those vehicles, senior management given the vehicles free of charge. So fundamentally, that forecast is completely wrong. And so you end up in a scenario where you bring a policy in to try and deliver so-called fairness, but also to deliver additional revenues. But everybody, and it's not very often I can tell you that as vehicle manufacturers we are in complete agreement. But we're all in complete agreement that it will deliver less volume of cars, and that will deliver less revenues to the government. So absolute lose-lose for everybody. Coming back to the first part of your question in terms of the importance that it is to the UK market, well, it's of course the provision of nearly new vehicles into the dealer network. And when we're talking 100,000 vehicles, that are a lot of cars that are ex-management cars, well looked after vehicles, in most cases single owners, so we're not talking about ex-rental style vehicles. They command a premium in the used car market. It's going to be a major hit to all of our businesses. Mine, in terms of the routines that I would have to take to retain some of our talent, because it's a big part of the package that people receive today. So a huge cost again on the business there, but also a huge cost on the dealer network businesses, some of whom, of course, have their own eco schemes, but also in terms of the availability of used cars.
My understanding as well is that it helps to ensure a greater variety of stock then in the nearly new market. Equally EVs as well, so that there would be an impact there for customers who traditionally have gone to buy a car that's 12 months old.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't choose an EV on ECOS. You'd probably go salary sacrifice in that scheme, but we have those kind of schemes as well, of course. But yeah, your ECOS user is an equivalent of a private retail customer. And that's why it's a really useful source of used cars, because people choose the cars they want to drive. They choose a range of colours, they choose a range of specifications. And so it's a good way of generating cars that actually represent good used stock thereafter. And that's where the real impact comes.
Okay. Eurig, I must talk to you about the retail networks for Stellantis. In recent years, we've seen huge growth, I guess, in terms of multi-franchising within the brands. We've seen a little bit of kind of network restructuring. What can you tell us now about the networks kind of moving forward and the reasoning behind that multi-franchising kind of push that we've seen?
Yeah, so we I think, well, certainly as Stellantis, seen a number of our brands coming together. And a big part of that is to ensure that you share the cost base of operating a new vehicle franchise across a number of brands, and therefore build sustainability for the future, particularly when you look at a car and van market this year, which will be over the 2 million level, but nowhere near the level that it might have been at its peak. So there's less volumes of vehicles, you need to manage the cost base. So that's at the core of that strategy. I think for us, obviously, quite a number of manufacturers, including Stellantis, flirted with the concept of agency, particularly post the COVID period. And for me, I've been brought up working with dealers. And from 25 years nearly now in the industry, my first role was at a dealership, and I've worked in relationship management with dealers throughout my time in the manufacturer side of the business. And so I cannot see, and certainly in the time that I'm the leader of Stellantis in the UK, we will not see anything other than a dealership relationship model. That's what I would want to see. I think, and there's a core reason for that. It's not because I wanted to generate a message that would be popular, but because I'm a business person at the end of the day. And what I see from the dealers is value added. And I think if you are going towards an agency model, then you've made the assumption there's no value added by the dealer network at all. And I think that is a fallacy and a big mistake.
Okay. Tell me more about that value added. What do you see as the real strengths of your dealer networks?
Well, if I take some of the challenges that you may ask me about in a minute, so I'll preempt it. But we have had a scenario this year where we had to stop drive for the first time ever a large volume of vehicles, over 100,000 Citroens for the Takata airbag routine. Now, where would I be without the brilliant dealer network that we have, who have, by the way, gone through 3/4 of those vehicles in just under 4 months? So an incredible level of progress. It's a clear example for you of where dealers don't look at this as a problem, but they've operated in a scenario where they're working out of hours, they're doing airbag replacements up to 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the evening outside of the normal workshop times, but really working alongside us to be able to say, okay, we have a problem. It happens to be, in this instance, not one of the manufacturer's fault, it's one of the suppliers that's no longer with us, of course. But we had to take a decision to put the customer safety first. And when you see a scenario where someone's died from an incident, that changes things dramatically. So we went for a stop drive scenario, really challenging for all of us, but I'd have been lost without the dealers for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The challenges that came with that, I believe you were, as a business, you were quite forthcoming, I guess, in terms of the warranty rate that dealers got. Are you happy that you did enough to support the network in managing that situation?
I would say humbly, eventually. And I think we did the best that we could do at the start. I think we communicated pretty well in terms of the challenges that we had. But the scale of the issue and the speed that we can get parts through the system and the level of support we needed, then we escalated that during. So we listened, we learned, and I think in the end we're probably at a level where, I can be relatively comfortable that we are working together really, really well. But did I get everything right at the start? I would be really arrogant and really stupid to say yes, and I'm not that kind of person who didn't get everything right at the start, but we learned quickly.
Okay, fantastic. And I understand that Stellantis came under a bit of pressure from the government as well as consumers, of course, who wanted their cars back on the road as soon as possible.
Indeed, yeah. I think they said we were not in full control and making a bit of a mess of things, but I would say it takes one to know one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a nightmare scenario, isn't it? It's not a scenario that really you can plan for, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's not normal either. And everybody has product recalls. We have normal, vehicle enhancement routines, software where we do upgrades over the air. These days, of course, there are issues where you repair in service. There are safety campaigns that everybody's worked with for a number of years, but to face a scenario where we had a stop drive, that is something completely new, I think, for the network, certainly completely new for us. We don't plan to have that very often, but we had no choice at the time other than to go in that direction. And again, I would say if we have Stellantis dealers with us today, then a huge thank you, because without you, we'd have been really struggling, and we did a great job of working through those. To the scenario now where the vehicles that we have outstanding, we're waiting for customers to come in. So we're not in a scenario where we've got any lead time requirements for parts or anything. We can go and we can get all of the vehicles repaired.
Are you confident that the issue will be finished by the end of the year, or how much longer is that going to?
Well, I'm confident that our ability with the network is there to complete.
Yeah.
In fact, we were confident we could have done that for the end of October, and that's what we published all the way through. I am in a scenario where I've got parts on the shelves ready to go. So then it's a question of bringing and getting customers in.
Yeah.
And you do enter a scenario, where you realise that people don't open their post. So we've done social media campaigns. We're on the third letter in some cases.
Right.
But if you can't get someone to respond, I'm not sure what else we can do in reality.
Yeah, absolutely. More generally, Eurig, talk to me about the role of technology for Stellantis UK and for the retail networks. We're seeing an industry that's rapidly evolving in how you communicate with customers and how you work on that retention. Talk to me about some of that.
Yeah, and I think the big piece in the room, I guess, is AI, artificial intelligence, and the role that can play. I think if I just choose one example and we choose marketing, then from our world, that is changing significantly right now as we speak. And if you grab your phone and go and do a Google search here in the UK, it's not the case in Europe yet, but if you do a Google search here in the UK, same in America, you have AI mode all of a sudden. And AI mode is giving you a summary of the search items that it's seeing, but it works in a very, very different way to the way that traditionally search engines work. And so a big challenge for us is to adapt very quickly in terms of the kind of content that you generate and create in order for you to be visible when a customer goes looking. You know, if we go back only 2 to 3 years, then actually as manufacturers, as dealers, we would choose maybe some keywords that we would want to sponsor for search engines and say, right, if we see a customer searching for those 2 or 3 terms, send them my way and you pay for the privilege. The challenge you have now is that customers no longer search in 2 or 3 words. They're searching in sentences, and they're asking questions rather than cheap new vehicle or best deal on a small car. They will ask, which car is best for a family of 2 with a dog? And the AI mode will give you the answer based on what content we are all generating.
Yeah.
And if you're not, if we are not adjusting our websites to making sure that we have that kind of content, that we have video reviews, that we have content that delivers that kind of messaging, we become invisible. So that is a big challenge for us to evolve quickly.
Absolutely. We've already seen the way that consumers have shopped change in the last 20 years. We're going to see that change even further, aren't we?
Yeah, 100%. And moving on from maybe that's the start of the purchase journey when they're looking and researching. But AI has a role then to play in terms of answering maybe some of the early leads and keeping people informed and so on. It's really an exciting moment. And I think for me, what I see in our own business, it's an opportunity for us to use AI to allow more of our people to do value-added tasks. And so, if you take a scenario where, as a manufacturer, we quite often look at the market stats at the end of the month and look at who's the winners and losers. And an analyst job would have had to go and churn that through Excel and generate all of the information and analysis that you need. Well, tools like Copilot today, you just send the daily report in to say, this is the results of the month, show me the winners and losers. 3 minutes later, you've got a PowerPoint slide without any human interaction at all. So we have to harness the ability to take that extra benefit that we can take and then use the human brain to put more value into the business thereafter. So it's not about saving people, this is about pushing and using resources that are human to take us into a situation where we can enhance what we're doing.
Yeah. Allow the technology to do the heavy lifting, and while we do the analysis and the value. Fantastic. At this point, I would like to invite Damian Tyler from our sponsor Assurant to join the panel, please, as well. Thanks, Damian. So I'm interested in hearing from both of you on. So we're 5 years on from the pandemic, which taught us a few lessons around, or we thought taught us a few lessons around how consumers wanted to or had to shop at the time. But actually, we've seen a huge return to the value of the face-to-face interaction between consumers and dealers. I'm interested in your thoughts on how can dealerships ensure they remain relevant in the future despite the technology. Damian, perhaps you talk to us first on that.
I can't see a time where technology, AI, whatever you call it, will replace the dealership models. I think retailers are the cornerstone of our industry, essentially, and I think purchasing a car is ultimately an experience. If you look at the trajectory through COVID, obviously that made sense because of that kind of trading environment, but that's definitely tailed off. I saw that Carvana, who are the kind of leader in the sort of true online e-tailer model, if you like, recently released a statement saying 70% of their customers still interact with a human throughout the purchasing cycle. So it's only a small proportion of their customers who want to buy. And that will always be the case. There will be people that want to buy fully online without any human interaction if they can. But most people want an experience. Most people want human interaction. And that's not just through the sales journey, that's through the after-sales journey, through the ownership cycle. People want to be reassured, they want the human touch. And buying a car is an experience, and yeah, you'll hear kind of varying degrees of kind of quality of experience. But ultimately, purchasing a new vehicle should be exciting, and it should be a human kind of experience. And so I can't see it ever kind of replaced, and certainly not in my professional lifetime anyway.
Eurig, your thoughts on that?
I broadly wouldn't disagree with anything that's just been said in fairness. And I think, the value that brands and the value that the dealer partners bring is the experience, right? One of the famous cinema chains will talk about it's the experience that counts. There's a lot of truth in that statement, and I think what COVID showed was a period where we are as an industry incredibly capable of adjusting and being agile and surviving. And credit to manufacturers, but to the dealer network in particular, to work through the challenges that we faced in COVID. But the reality is that people want the experience, people want to touch and feel, people buy cars for the passion of what that product can offer them, what status that product gives them. But more importantly, I think for us, in particular with brands like Alfa Romeo, it's for the enjoyment that it gives as well. And so, absolutely, there's a role to play for digital, but an absolute role for physical interaction into the future.
Absolutely. I suppose in a way, the transition to electric vehicles plays into the hands of the franchise networks, because who else is there that are experts in this new technology and the new products but the retailers?
For now, yes. I think we would be arrogant if we took that point of view for a period where we thought that independents wouldn't catch up. I think we have to be absolutely careful about the fact that, of course, we're not the only ones in the long-term future that can work on electric vehicles. There's a higher skill level required for working on an electric car to working on a nice conventional vehicle, very different skill level. But let's not be arrogant in the way that we go about the business. We need to be focused on the future. We need to protect our businesses moving forward. And one of the challenges that comes from electrification is that the level of interaction into service workshops is lower. It's not eradicated, but it's lower. And so we have to make sure that we break the model where we lose our customers at 3 years. We need our customers to stay into the franchise model for a longer term, and for sure for us to capture the second owners and third owners so that our business thrive moving forward.
So we'll put pressure on the retention processes, I guess, to ensure that happens.
Yeah, and it'll require for us all, I think, to look at how do we generate a situation where manufacturer is interested, dealer is interested in selling second and third owner vehicles as well. And that is something, when you look at the residual value trajectory of a battery electric vehicle right now, those two challenges actually come together quite well, because one of the solutions is not to realize the residual value by reselling the vehicle on a second lease. And so I think those two things can come together really, really well. We can look at things like we have in Citroën and in the Peugeot brand in the UK, where we have service activated extended warranty. That is designed, of course, to reassure our customers, but it's really designed to support the network to make sure that the customers have to come back for the servicing to the dealers, but they get rewarded with an extended warranty and therefore keep coming back until the ownership of the vehicle stops.
Okay. Damian, we're seeing an influx of new brands in the UK, and obviously the changes to the market conditions. What do you think that retailers with traditional brands and NSCs with traditional brands can do to kind of react to them, and what pressures does that put on them, do you think?
Yeah, we're seeing a real sort of shift away from kind of traditional brand loyalty, I guess, and I think there's now probably 70 brands in the UK compared to 45 previously, so it's tough, and it's a smaller market, and kind of retaining or growing market share is therefore kind of imperative. And what we're seeing, especially with EV brands, is that consumers are more driven to purchase based on range or features or kind of the whole kind of the technology of the vehicle, rather than just the brand of the vehicle. So I think therefore it becomes not just about the product, but the overall kind of ecosystem around that product. So the whole service experience, the customer service, the experience. So it's like, what's your whole ecosystem offering? Are you offering kind of seamless digital experiences? Are you transitioning to kind of true omni-channel, where whatever the customer touch point is, you're offering a really, really good service and supporting throughout the ownership of that vehicle? And that does extend out to 3 to 5, 5 to 7, however long you want to go. It's kind of having that confidence. You're seeing brands like Amoda, as an example, take 2% share in just a click of a finger. So And it's with really, really strong offerings around kind of the after-sales experience as well, so extended warranties and maintenance programs and those sorts of bits and pieces. So I think it's about the whole offering rather than just the product and the service that's added.
Yes. Eurig, your thoughts on that? Obviously, Stellantis has introduced Leap Motor in the UK as well, I guess as a new kind of perhaps lower price kind of opportunity to target customers.
Yeah, I'll come back to Leap in a second, but we've managed to resist that attack from competitors this year. Our car market share as Stellantis brands has grown year on year. So we are absolutely taking the fight head on. I think some of the new brands aren't my only competitors. I talk quite often internally that there is competition outside of which brands are in the UK. There's competition in terms of the whole model. And I talk specifically of price comparison sites, and that is putting pressure on our business, putting pressure on the dealer's business in terms of the way that they're going about advertising vehicles and pushing finance quotes and calculations available, giving the customer quite a lot of information outside of the dealer network. That, I think, is a threat to everybody's business as well. In terms of Leap Motor, of course, it gives us an insight into the cost of manufacturing vehicles in China by comparison. One thing that's different about Leap for us, we are seeing great levels of growth. We took 0.5% of market share within 3 months of really launching our products in October with the cars. We only sell electric. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer that everybody has got that the Chinese manufacturers have come to the UK selling electric cars. Jaguar haven't sold an electric car yet. They're selling plug-in hybrids that never get plugged in. But they're not selling electric vehicles in the volumes that everybody thinks, right? Yeah. So then you're into a scenario where we are bringing high emission, in real world, high emissions, so plug-in hybrids that never get charged.
Yeah, if they're not being plugged in.
Manufactured in a high CO2 environment, brought across the world in high emitting boats to be sold in our market. Now, is that a good strategy when we want to transition to a low CO2 economy? I'm not sure. I'm being provocative, of course, but it's something for sure that we should question.
Yeah, perhaps that's something that the DFT needs to consider, and one of the many things it needs to consider. We have a few minutes for questions from the audience if anybody wants to raise their hand. If not, I've got a couple more that I can ask. We should have a roving mic. Anyone? No, I will carry on then. So interested in your thoughts, both of you. Where are we going to be in 10 years' time? And the motorists who are going into EVs, do you think, how will they feel when they're plugging in at that point compared to how some of them feel now? Or perhaps the ones who haven't taken that step feel now?
To me first?
Yes.
I think we will be a long way into electrifying the vehicle park in the UK, no doubt about it. Whether we'll be at the scenario where the current mandate demands us to be, I would question heavily. I'm not sure that the demand will catch up at to that level. I think one of the big changes that we will see is that people start to stabilise in terms of their mindset of what range do you need from a car. And so I think if we take, average mileage for the UK consumer might be 10,000 miles at the high end for an average consumer. And what's that is just under 200 miles in a week. The reality is one charge a week. Yet actually we talk about charging infrastructure and we talk about the requirement of range anxiety being as if someone we have to charge every hour of the day. And so I think that normalisation of seeing chargers prop up everywhere, I guess everybody in the room, right, will see, even in West Wales where I live, you've got chargers galore starting to come through. Most of them aren't connected, but that's a different challenge, but that will come. But you start to see chargers, you start to see high-speed charging everywhere, and people start to, I think, accelerate that transition. And the other important point, I think, is that right now, as you transition to electric, then we will see a reduction in the number of brands, in my view. Some legacy brands disappearing, but probably quite a number of the new brands disappearing as well. And, at some point, you will get to a situation where a consumer demands more than a product that they're buying because it's an electric car or it's got some nice features. People historically choose cars because of enjoyment. And one thing is to make a car that can go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds in a straight line. And the enjoyment comes from making the car that can go down the A5 across North Wales, that keep the pace through the corners and reward you for having some driving skill. And so that is something for brands like Alfa Romeo that can really excel, and that's what I hope to see the future going. Less Magnolia and a little bit more personality and more driving pleasure from electric cars.
You think there will still be a place for those niche brands?
100%. I mean, these brands mean a lot to customers. Now, the future of those brands very much depends on our ability to make that transition and keep what the brand stands for. And so, if I was to transition Alfa Romeo from all of the heritage that we have to a car that can go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds in a straight line, but it's dreadful on the corners, the brand will die. That's not our intention, of course, and that's not what we will do.
Absolutely. Damian, what are your thoughts on kind of in 10 years' time?
I think 10 years' time is a very long time away, and I think if you look back over the last 10 and the pace of change we've seen, which has been rapid, it's hard to say. But what I will say is that you'd like to think that in 10 years' time, plugging a car in or charging a car will be as kind of widespread and normal as plugging your mobile phone in today. But there's a lot of caveats to that, and there's a lot that needs to be true. You know, you talked around a 360 plan, and that's the reality. It's not just on OEMs. Right now, we're seeing a lot of artificial demand, a lot of push demand. We know that the learning curve is flattening, and we know that despite all the anxieties around purchasing EVs, 95% of EV drivers would recommend an EV. So yeah, I absolutely think things will accelerate and continue to accelerate to normalise. But also things can change, right? So if you think about regulation, you think about policy, you think about infrastructure, and not just from a charging perspective, from a repair network perspective as well, right? So we're an insurer, and we're looking at these vehicles as they proliferate the market and what they're going to do as they age. And we're not yet there. We're not at that learning curve yet. So as these vehicles that are 3 to 5 years old now start getting older, we don't really have the right infrastructure at the moment for the number of vehicles there are. So there's a lot of considerations and still a lot that needs to be done, and a lot of actors that needs to come to the table to make it happen.
Yeah, a lot to iron out, but I suppose, as you say, 10 years' time is quite a long way away in terms of the industry, but hopefully a lot will be sorted out by then. I'm conscious that we have now come to the end of our session, so my thanks, Eurig Druce from Stellantis and Damian Tyler from Assurant. Please show your appreciation for what you've heard this morning.